My name is Jacob. I'm probably the most nervous I've ever been in my life right now. That's because today is the day I'm going to Sarah's house to formally ask her for her hand in marriage. Sarah and I were classmates back in middle school, and we started dating after we reconnected at a school reunion about 6 months ago. We're both over 30 now, and naturally, we've been talking a lot about our future. Sarah often brought up marriage. While Sarah did put a bit of pressure on me, I was also considering settling down, and so we decided to get married. Because of that, I regret not being able to propose to her properly. We decided to get married before we really planned anything, and it was only a few days ago that we decided I would go to her house to formally ask for her hand. I've never met Sarah's parents since we started dating, but I once caught a glimpse of her father. It was either at a parent-teacher conference or at a school fair during our middle school years. I remember him talking about education with our homeroom teacher. While he seemed a bit intimidating at the time, I was impressed by how passionate a father could be about his child's education. That's probably because I lost my own father when I was in elementary school, and he was a man who didn't interfere much and let me do what I wanted to do. So the memory of Sarah's father talking with the teacher was particularly vivid. He must be a very serious person. So what will he think when he finds out we decided to get married on a whim and that I didn't propose properly? He might even say that our relationship of only 6 months is too short. The more I think about it, the more anxious I become, and I didn't sleep well last night. As I struggled to eat my breakfast, my mom looked at me with concern. I told her I was going to introduce her to my girlfriend soon. I haven't told her yet that it's Sarah, as I wanted to surprise her. My parents were also middle school classmates, so I think she will be happy to find out that my future wife is also a classmate. After my father passed away, our family struggled financially, and I had to start working right after graduating from middle school. I owe it to my mom that I managed to stay on the right path. She's always been upbeat, never talks bad about others, and is very positive. Because of her, I've always been able to live with hope. My mom rarely asks about my love life or whether I have a girlfriend. We live together, and she knows I'm busy, so I think she's just being considerate. I want to reassure her. That's why I absolutely have to make today's meeting a success. I feel like I'm about to get an ulcer. But seeing me so nervous, my mom patted me on the back and said with a smile, "Go and nail it, son." That's right. There's no point in being weak. I need to pull myself together. With that in mind, I headed to Sarah's house. When I arrived, Sarah opened the door and welcomed me inside. "My parents are waiting," she said, and a wave of anxiety hit me. When I entered the living room, Sarah's parents were sitting on the couch, and they smiled at me. "Thanks for coming. We've been waiting," they said with a smile, and I felt relieved. It's not scary at all. They seem very welcoming, and I think this could go well. After introducing myself, Sarah's mom served some tea. "Thank you," I said. "Turns out you were in middle school with Sarah? I had no idea. Were you ever in the same class as Sarah?" she asked. I told her that we'd never been in the same class, but Sarah had spoken to me at the school reunion. "Oh, I see. But I should remember you if you were a top student, even from another class," she mused, resting a hand on her cheek, looking puzzled. Before I could reply, Sarah chimed in with a chuckle. "Jacob wasn't exactly a star student, was he? Always around average, right?" I wish she hadn't been so blunt, but it was too late. I glanced over and saw Sarah's mom looking at me with an indescribable expression. Sarah's comment had changed the tone in the room. What was once a pleasant atmosphere had now become heavy and silent. After a moment of awkward silence, Sarah's dad broke it. "What college did you attend?" I never went to college. In fact, I hadn't even finished high school. Well, actually, I started working right after middle school. I was planning to be honest about my past when a cup of tea came flying at me before I could finish my sentence. At the same time, a shout echoed, "Don't mess with me. I let you into my home because Sarah told me you were a CEO. What's this? You've been working since middle school? So you're a dropout? A company run by someone like you can't be reliable. With the startup boom, You're just riding the wave, and you'll fail soon. That's certain. Sarah's dad glared at me, flabbergasted. He grabbed my collar and bellowed, "What's your motive? Trying to cash in because I'm an executive at a major corporation?" I desperately tried to deny it, but he wasn't listening. "I can't trust a word from a high school dropout. This isn't a place for the uneducated. Get out," he said, tossing me aside and throwing a teacup at me. After that, I couldn't even explain the misunderstanding, let alone calm him down. He kicked me, and I fell to the ground. Sarah and her mom just watched. As I lay there, disappointed they hadn't helped me, everything went black. He had flipped the dining table at me. I tried to dodge, but the table hit my foot. Overwhelmed by the intense pain, I let out a muffled groan. Sarah's dad scoffed. "You're overreacting. It couldn't hurt that much." Sarah's mom added, "You're quite fragile for a man." Even Sarah chimed in. "This is so pathetic." I knew I had to leave. Despite the lingering pain in my foot, I somehow managed to leave Sarah's house. When I got home, my mom, who had been eagerly waiting for me, rushed out to greet me. The moment I saw her, I passed out from relief. "Jacob! Thank God you're awake!" When I opened my eyes, my mom's worried face was hovering over me. Her eyes were filled with tears. As I regained consciousness, I remembered what happened at Sarah's house. I was supposed to make her happy, but instead, I made her worry and sad. "I'm sorry, Mom. I don't think I can introduce you to my girlfriend after all," I admitted. When I told her this, my mom said, "Don't worry about it, Jacob. I'm just relieved you woke up. I was really surprised when you collapsed in front of me." Apparently, due to the shock, I had slept for a full day. According to what my mom heard from the doctor, it seems that the bone in my toe is broken. I can be discharged from the hospital soon, but it seems like it will take about a month to heal. "They also said they found bruises all over your body. I won't force you to talk, but if you can, could you tell me what happened?" Prompted by my mom, I explained the events of the day. The moment I mentioned the surname of Sarah, Mom's face changed color. "Johnson? You don't mean..." It appears that when I was in junior high school, my mom was criticized by Sarah's dad, who said having a child of a single parent around is a bad influence on my daughter. My father was no longer around when I was in junior high. My mom was busy with work every day and was only able to come to school events once during the 3 years. She was told such a thing by Sarah's dad on that single occasion. Mom must have been deeply hurt. I didn't know anything about it because my mom never said anything about it and didn't show it in her behavior at all. But now, my mom is making a very frustrated face, saying, "I can't believe that the person who said such a thing hurt my son." The moment I saw that expression on my mom's face, my anger reached its boiling point. It's not just that he looked down on me for being a junior high school graduate, but he also oppressed my mom in the past. I made a determination to get back at them, father and daughter. The next day, I headed for Sarah's house again. I contacted her in advance, but Sarah didn't seem to feel guilty about what happened, and rather blamed me for the lack of communication during the full day I was unconscious. So, she was like that. I felt pathetic thinking that the person I decided to marry was like that, but I also thought it was a good thing that I got to know before getting married. When I arrived at Sarah's house, both her father and mother were waiting outside. "Daring to come back here? Don't you dare step foot in this house again." Sarah's father was already on the offensive. He didn't mention at all that I was on crutches with a cast on my left foot. "I have no intention of stepping in again. I've decided to file a complaint, so I came to report it today," I said. At my words, the two looked at each other and started laughing. "Wait, are you serious about the complaint? You weren't seriously injured. It's absurd to sue your fiancé's dad," Sarah retorted. I informed her that the engagement was off. I thought they would be a little flustered if I mentioned the complaint and the breakup of the engagement, but that was not the case. Sarah said, "Don't give up just because the greeting didn't go well. If you apologize, Jacob, I'll ask my dad to give you another chance." "What do I have to apologize for?" My blood boiled and I clearly stated, "I have nothing to apologize for. I'm serious about both the breakup of the engagement and the complaint." Then Sarah arrogantly said, "Playing the tragic hero, huh? My father could easily squash a little thing like a police report. He'd even make this broken engagement disappear if it happened now. Unbelievable. How dare she act so high and mighty? Then, even Sarah's dad chimed in. Sarah, we're better off without a man like this. Go ahead. File a police report if you want. I doubt you've got enough evidence for it to mean anything anyway, he said, laughing mockingly. Like father, like daughter. That phrase suddenly felt very fitting. Are you sure about that? I decided to throw a wrench in the laughing family's mood. You have no proof that I did anything, so the police can't do anything. You thought I'd back down if you mentioned a police report, didn't you? Fool. You should know better than to think that would scare me. With his hands on his hips, Sarah's father laughed confidently. That's when I decided to show him the reality of the situation. Actually, that's the evidence. Apparently not understanding what I meant. The three of them just gaped at me. I pulled out my phone and played a recording. I've been recording everything since before I arrived. I needed to gather evidence that my injuries were caused by you. No matter how high up you are in a big corporation, you can't hide from an assault charge when the evidence is all laid out, right? At this, instead of apologizing, Sarah's father started yelling at me. How dare you! Go ahead, file your report. There's no way I'm letting you marry Sarah. Sarah's mom, who had been quiet until now, began to panic. We can still forgive him if we do it now, right, honey? No need. As I said earlier, the engagement is off, and I will file a report. I don't want to marry someone who doesn't care when their fiancé is injured and who joins their parents in making fun of me. When I said that, Sarah, who had been looking down on me until just now, started to panic. You're lying, Jacob. You said you wanted to marry me. You liar. Sarah's dad then started. You low-educated punk. I'll never forgive you. And lunged at me. The shock of his punch threw me off balance, and I fell to the ground. Sarah's mom desperately tried to stop her husband, who was about to start punching me while I was down. Honey, this is bad. We don't know who might be watching. But Sarah's dad didn't stop. You're just a figurehead CEO. You lured Sarah with that. And now you're going to sue me? I'll sue you for fraud. Then I'll have to cancel our $5 million order to your company. I'd been thinking about it for a while, and I'd made up my mind. I was going to corner this man as much as possible. What are you talking about? $5 million? There's no way you can make a deal like that. Sarah's father got off me, calling me an idiot. It was time to show him reality. I called my mother. What are you going to achieve by calling your mother? Sarah told me you only have one parent. How sad that you only have your mother to help you in times like this. It really does make a difference not having a father, huh? Sarah's father, who didn't know what was coming, still looked down on me. It was almost comical. About 10 minutes later, the moment I was waiting for arrived. Sarah's father's cell phone began to ring. He said it was from his company and answered the call. At first, he spoke with clear and confident tones, but his speech gradually became sluggish, and his face turned pale. As soon as he ended the call, he glared at me, saying, What the hell have you done? I did exactly what I said earlier. I canceled the order. I didn't want to do business with a company that looks down on people for being less educated or from single-parent families. I explained calmly. But Sarah's father didn't seem convinced. There's no way someone with your low education level could do that. Do you have connections or something? He scoffed, still looking down on me for my limited education. I lost any desire to continue the conversation. Believe what you want. Goodbye, I said, and I turned on my heel. Sarah's father tried to chase after me, shouting, Wait a minute! But he was cornered by Sarah and her mother, asking, What's this about, $5 million? What was that phone call about? He couldn't move. I did indeed only finish middle school, and it could be said that I just caught the startup wave. But I started a business with the money I saved with my mother, and it was successful enough to trade with major companies now. I called my mother, who was the vice president of my company, and had her contact Sarah's father's company. I didn't want to bring personal matters into work, but I had reached my limit. But when I got home and saw my mother's usual cheerful face, I felt guilty. Bringing my personal matters into it, I was finished as a CEO. I also felt sorry for having made my mother take on such an unpleasant role. Sorry, Mom, for making you make that unpleasant call, and for making us have to find another supplier. I apologized. In contrast to my apology, my mother was smiling. When I asked her why, she said, I came up with a good idea and decided on my own without consulting you. the CEO. When my mother called the president of the other company, she reported what Sarah's father had done to me, and it seems she suggested that if Sarah's father was fired, the cancellation of the order could be revoked. Before I got home, the president of the other company called to say that Sarah's father had been fired. My mother, true to her word, seems to have continued the order. I didn't mind making the call, and we didn't have to look for another supplier. We just got rid of a nasty guy who only looked at status and insulted others. With that, my mother encouraged me as if there was nothing to worry about. After that, I received several calls and emails from Sarah pressuring me to marry her, so I blocked her number. According to a story I heard from a middle school classmate after this incident was over, Sarah knew I was the CEO and approached me at the reunion. She probably wanted to be the CEO's wife and started dating and talking about marriage with me. Sarah's father was arrested because I filed a complaint. Sarah's mother, who had been bragging about her husband working for a major company, couldn't bear the eyes of the neighborhood knowing that he had been arrested and seemed to have disappeared somewhere, leaving Sarah behind. It was a fitting ending for a mother and daughter who were only concerned about how they were seen by others. I continued my contract with the company where Sarah's father had been, and we have a good relationship now. There are also talks about new projects, and it seems that busy but fulfilling days will continue for a while.
Well, that's how it is. So I'll take that luxury foreign car off your hands. It's wasted on a plain woman like Margareta. Just the other day, my folks were saying they wanted to buy a new car.
Ever since we got married, my husband, Brandon, has become increasingly selfish. He even started coveting the precious car I got from my parents. I had been enduring it for a long time, but even I had reached my limit. My name is Margareta. I'm 25 years old. I met my husband, Brandon, at college, and we have been married for 2 years. Compared to me, who's introverted and not great at socializing, Brandon is outgoing and has many friends. We got to know each other in our college seminars, and gradually we began to talk more, eventually studying together in libraries and cafes. Even though we were in the same seminar, I never imagined someone as plain and unnoticeable as me would end up dating someone popular like Brandon. And to my surprise, it was Brandon who asked me out. I was ecstatic, experiencing mutual love for the first time. Of course, I immediately said yes to his proposal, and our relationship started. It made sense that I was drawn to Brandon. He was good-looking, had a friendly demeanor, was serious about his studies, but it should have been different for Brandon. He had plenty of cute, fashionable female friends around him. He could have easily found someone else to be his girlfriend. I once boldly asked Brandon, "Do you really think I'm the right one for you?" He looked surprised and responded,
Huh? What brought this on?
"I'm like this and don't have much confidence. Just wondering why you chose me as your girlfriend." After pondering a bit, Brandon muttered a typical response.
Well, I guess it's comfortable being with you.
I must have looked unsatisfied because he then said,
What's with the silence? Do I really need to spell out everything I like about you?
Brandon replied with a hint of annoyance, fiddling with his mobile phone. Not wanting to push him away, I quickly wrapped up the conversation. "Yeah, you're right. Sorry for bringing it up out of the blue." Though I had lingering doubts, our relationship continued smoothly. Time flew by. We graduated from college, got married, and moved into a condominium. I found a job at a general company, while Brandon pursued graduate studies and academic research. When I mentioned getting married, Mom seemed very happy. "That's a great deal. Dad and I were a bit worried. We thought Margareta would at least introduce a boyfriend to us." Sorry, I should have told you about Brandon sooner." "That's all right. You've always been one to keep things to yourself, Margareta. Always trying not to trouble us, handling everything on your own. But knowing you have someone to support you makes me relieved. Brandon will be there to protect you." My parents also met in college, and still have a loving relationship, which I admire. Dad was a hard worker. After graduating, he joined a renowned company, steadily climbing up the ranks to an executive position. There is Mom, who respects Dad and supports him by his side. She used to work at a publishing company, and after getting married, she perfected her hobby of cooking while raising her children. Now, she's a popular cooking expert, having published several recipe books and teaching cooking classes. They respected each other's lives and never restricted one another. Growing up under their roof, I too developed a spirit of independence. Though my only forte was studying, I didn't pursue graduate school. I wanted to be self-sufficient as soon as possible and establish my own life. I was raised comfortably in a well-off family, but I couldn't remain the pampered daughter forever. I wanted to build my own family, just like Dad and Mom. I hope to have children one day and make my parents happy. It was more a goal than a dream. It might seem ordinary, but it's not that simple, especially for someone as awkward as me. After we started living together, Brendan gradually became more selfish. He was a graduate student and worked part-time, but he hardly contributed to our living expenses. Hey, Brendan, it would really help if you could put a little more of your part-time earnings towards our expenses. I said this casually, not wanting to upset him, but he coldly replied,
What? I do contribute some, besides. Didn't you say, when we decided to move in together, that you would handle the living expenses, Margareta?
Brendan had always said he wanted to be a professor, which is why he went to grad school. Brendan has been saying that for a while, wanting to support his dream. When we decided to get married, I said I got a decent salary from the job I landed after graduation. Don't worry about it, just focus on your research, Brendan. I mumbled hesitantly, yeah, I did say that, but couldn't say anything more definite, and Brendan let out a big sigh.
Oh, I guess you wouldn't understand, Margareta. Being a grad student involves a lot of expenses for socializing and stuff. Oh, I forgot to mention, I need to go on a research trip soon. And, I'm a bit short on the travel funds. Could you lend me like $500? I'll pay you back later.
This kind of financial pressure from Brendan became more frequent after that, and the problems deepened. The number of nights Brendan spent out increased noticeably. I sat in front of cold meals, waiting for a call on my mobile phone. On the rare occasion he came home in a good mood, I remained too lenient. Sometimes he would say,
Hey, Margareta, remember you wanted to visit that place? I have tomorrow off. Let's go together.
Bringing up trips out of the blue, or
Wow, today's dinner is my favorite. That's so like you, Margareta. Always knowing what I like.
I was constantly swayed by his words and actions. Every time Brendan was kind to me, I caught a glimpse of the ideal married life, and my heart wavered. I knew this unnatural way of living couldn't last. Tormented by loneliness and anxiety, and unable to confide in anyone, I kept everything to myself. I didn't want to sadden my parents, who had been so happy when we decided to get married, but they must have started to realize something was wrong. When I visited my parents' house after a long time, Dad casually said,
Why didn't you stay tonight? You must be tired from the unfamiliar life. How about dinner with the family for a change?
That night, Mom prepared an array of lavish dishes showcasing her culinary skills. During dinner, Dad mentioned,
By the way, your sister visited the other day. She wanted to see you, Margareta. She said you should get together for tea sometime.
It's always sudden with her.
That's just how she is. I keep telling her to let us know in advance.
Dad shrugged as if it couldn't be helped. The sister he referred to was my Aunt Eileen, a lively, ambitious, and independent woman. I'll get in touch with her soon. Yes, do that. Eileen loves you a lot, Margareta.
She's always complaining about how Brendan stole you from her, and yet she's adamant about not getting married herself. Well, that's just Eileen for you.
Before I met Brendan, Eileen was more like an older friend than an aunt. I could talk to her about things I couldn't tell my parents. She understood me better than anyone and always supported me. I was too shy to tell her about Brandon at first. I wanted to see Eileen again and show her I was doing well. A few days after staying at my parents', I met Eileen at a cafe we had arranged to meet at. Eileen, a fashion designer, was dressed exceptionally stylishly as usual. Eileen scrutinized my outfit from head to toe and said gently, "You know, Margareta, for a woman, marriage is just the beginning of a lifelong challenge. You'd always feel attractive. No matter how little confidence you have, clothes can transform you, so never neglect yourself." And she elegantly sipped her tea. Indeed, I had completely forgotten about fashion lately. "I'm so sorry for not getting in touch for so long." I apologized in a low voice, and Eileen said, "That's just like you, Margareta. Being honest and serious is great, but being too timid comes from a lack of experience. But I was so happy when I heard you had found someone special. I thought finally Margareta has taken her first step." It had been a long time since I had met someone outside on a day off. Luckily, the weather was perfect. Sitting at the terrace, the warm sunlight poured down on us. In this peaceful atmosphere, I felt I could open up about my worries to Eileen without feeling too down. Yeah, at first, I thought even someone as timid as me could make it work with Brandon, that I could really do it, but Eileen listened to my whole story without interrupting, just nodding kindly. When I finished, she asked, "I guess you haven't told your parents about this, have you, Margareta?" "Yes. I even hesitated about telling you today. I didn't want to admit my weaknesses to anyone. I thought I should be able to overcome this on my own, to be truly independent. I know if Dad and Mom heard about this, they would want to take me back home right away. So I want to try to handle this by myself as much as I can." Eileen respected my decision and didn't press any further. But she said at the end, "If you ever really need help, let me know first. If my dear Margareta asks for help, I'll come to you no matter where I am." A month later, Mom called and said, "When you have time, could you come over? It's not urgent." I had the next day off, so I visited my parents. Seeing a car parked in the driveway, I exclaimed, unable to hide my excitement. "What? Dad, this car? Did you get it recently?" Dad, with a satisfied look, teasingly said,
Want to take it for a spin?
"Really? Can I? It's such a fancy car. What if I crash it?"
Don't worry about that. This car is for you, Margareta. Use it as you like. It'll be handy to have.
Mom whispered to me we saw this car in a TV commercial and you said it was cool. Dad remembered that, so this is our gift to you. You've been having a tough time lately, so we wanted to cheer you up. If things get hot, just drive this and come home anytime." She smiled kindly. The car Dad chose for me was an SUV from a world-famous foreign brand, and he had even secured a parking spot near my condominium. I couldn't help but laugh in disbelief. Later, when I was driving the car downtown, I fumbled in my pocket, found the car key, and pressed the button. The lights flashed in all directions. Just then, a familiar voice called out from behind,
What's up with that car?
I turned around to see my husband, Brandon. He hadn't been home for quite a while. It was almost like we were separated. I was speechless, and he said with a know-it-all look,
Oh, I see. Got it from your parents, huh?
Whenever I faced Brandon, I found myself unable to say anything. But I was tired of feeling that way. "Brandon, it doesn't matter to you anymore. You probably don't care about me anymore," I said, mastering my voice and piecing my words together. Then, Brandon uttered something unbelievable.
What? You're just realizing now? Did you seriously believe all this time that I loved you? It's laughable how optimistic you are.
His dry laugh echoed in my ears. Something inside me finally snapped and I blurted out unusually loudly. Then why did you marry me?
Wow, hysterical much? Fine, I'll tell you. Your family is rich, right? I figured marrying Margarita would mean I wouldn't have to worry about food for a while, considering what I make from part-time work and studies. So I'll take that car too. It's wasted on a plain woman like you. My parents were just saying they wanted to change their car. It's like killing two birds with one stone. Doing a favor for my parents.
Brandon was completely unabashed, spouting his justification.
Oh, and if you refuse, we're getting a divorce. You know, without me, you might never find another man. So think hard at home and what's the right decision.
Brandon threw these words and left abruptly. I was left in a state of anger and sorrow. Overwhelmed by a terrible headache, breathing ragged, I sat in the driver's seat for a while, waiting for my emotions to settle. Then I took out my phone and called my Aunt Eileen. A few days later, things took a rapid turn. I readily agreed to the divorce and left the condominium to return to my parents' home. My parents welcomed me with open arms and life finally seemed to regain some tranquility. But a week later, during a peaceful afternoon, an unwelcome visitor arrived. My ex-husband Brendan stood at the front door accompanied by his parents. After they were ushered into the living room, Brendan's father started.
We're here to discuss our son's divorce. It's quite urgent.
His tone was intimidating.
When writing the divorce papers, Brendan was told by Margareta, if you don't agree to the divorce, I'll ruin your future. With my parents' connections in the university, it would be easy to crush a junior grad student's career if their only daughter cries to them.
He truly loved Margareta. Such treatment is too much.
This is clear intimidation. We could easily contest the divorce. He was deceived by a terrible woman. Behind her plain appearance, she's a mean-spirited, greedy woman.
Poor Brandon. I heard she paid him to stay away. She must have had men over.
We need to go to family court and claim Brandon was threatened by his wife. But if there is an appropriate apology, things might change. For instance, if Margareta gives up that car she's driving, that might smooth things over.
Brandon remained silent besides his protesting parents. Suddenly, the doorbell rang, and after a brief pause, Mom sighed and went to the door. Elaine appeared behind Mom as she returned to the living room. Sorry, I'm late. How far have you gotten in the discussion? Brandon's family had met Elaine once at my wedding.
What are you doing here? It's rude to barge in like that. We're busy now. Outsiders should leave.
No, don't be like that. You'll hear about Brandon's divorce, right?
How does an outsider like you know about that?
I was informed by my brother earlier. I couldn't stay away from such a crucial moment for my dear niece. Elaine gave a small reassuring glance. You're probably here to cancel the divorce or beg for money. Can you still say that after seeing this? Elaine pulled out a stack of documents from her bag, spread them out on the table, and showed them. I hired a detective to investigate. It seems Brandon, despite being married, has been cheating with several women. He rarely came home because of that. He took advantage of Margareta's kindness to live as he pleased, even begging for money.
That's nonsense. I was just busy with my research at the university. When I did come home, we ate together and went on trips, right? We were like any other married couple, right, Margareta? Say something. Brandon, you don't need to say anything. We'll handle this. It's not your fault. We understand,
said his father. That's right. These documents from who knows where are surely lies. Our Brandon would never cheat. He's such a kind and excellent son. His mother protested. You may be kind to your parents, but that's only within your family. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Now, Brenda's mother, please look at these photos, Elaine said, pulling out a picture from the documents. Recently, I stayed at a hotel for a business meeting and saw Nicholas there. He was with a beautiful woman looking quite intimate, so I asked the detective to investigate Nicholas too. The results were as I expected. You understand, don't you? Brandon's mother's face turned pale. She grabbed the documents and scanned them intensely. What is this, Nicholas? Since when have you been doing this?
It's a lie. All lies. Veronica, stop looking. Give me that. Nicholas, looking panicked, tried to snatch the documents, but it was too late. Veronica, distraught, confronted Nicholas.
You have been doing this behind my back? The car you wanted so badly was for her in these photos, wasn't it?
No matter how Nicholas tried to calm her, Veronica wouldn't listen. The discussion about Brandon's divorce was forgotten. Veronica left the house crying, and Nicholas hurried after her. Brandon, left behind, said, "Hey, wait, what about me?" and followed them out in confusion. We all remained in stunned silence for a while, but Aline was the only one with a satisfied look winking at me. Later, Aline told me that Brandon's parents did indeed get divorced.
You won't fall for such a terrible man again. Let's make you more attractive. I'll teach you everything about polishing yourself as a woman.
Despite her busy schedule, Aline visited me and took me to various places. Meals, shopping, trips. During this time, I learned a lot from her. A year after the divorce, I decided to go to graduate school. I continued to improve myself while studying hard. Time flew, and one day, someone called out to me at a street intersection. I turned around to see Brandon. "It's been a while. You changed a lot, haven't you? At first, I didn't even recognize you," Brandon said, looking at me intently. In Brandon's eyes, the woman standing before him was no longer the plain ex-wife he knew, but had transformed into an incredibly beautiful and attractive woman. In contrast, Brandon himself had fallen on hard times. Due to the scandal of his parents' divorce, it seemed he was no longer attending graduate school. His parents, Nicholas and Veronica, had decided not to provide any financial support to Brandon anymore because of the situation he caused. He was far from the carefree life of going out, struggling even to afford his tuition and living expenses. The women who once flocked around him left him one by one. The farmer glory he enjoyed vanished in an instant, and now he found himself face to face with his ex-wife, who seemed to be a completely different person. Brandon, perhaps feeling desperate, started to say, "Hey, would you like to catch up? Maybe we could go to a cafe or something?" Just as he began, a man approached and asked, "Sorry for the wait. Are you a friend of Margaretta's or something?" Shifting his gaze to Brandon. This man was Leonard, someone I was currently dating.
You see that guy? Isn't he really handsome?
He's so tall."
Wow, yeah. Could he be a model or something?
A group of women nearby commented, looking at Leonard. "He's someone I used to know a long time ago, but it's okay. We are done talking. Let's go, shall we?" Is that so? All right then, let's go," Leonard said, taking my hand and briefly greeting Brandon. Brandon stood there, stunned, watching us. Without any concern for Brandon, Leonard led me by the hand towards the crosswalk. And I, too, never looked back, keeping my eyes fixed straight ahead as we left.